Hello all, Jamie Rodgers here from Jamie Rodgers Crafts, and today I thought we'd have a little play around with a few of the pieces from my Festive Wishes collection, and we will create this lovely Frosty Rodney card, playing around with our diamond stencil, our brand new ink pads, a little bit of texture paste, and of course a stamp or two as well. So let's dive on in and have a little play, shall we? So let's start off creating the background to our lovely project. So we're going to start with our diamond stencil. Now this is one of the 8x8 stencils which has launched with the Christmas Wishes collection. Now this one especially can be used all year round. You know, there's no reason this couldn't be used for every occasion, to be honest. I can't think of a single one that you might not want to use a checkerboard for the background, because it's always going to be down to the colours we work with and the ways we dress them up, isn't it, to how this is going to look. Now, as you may know, I like to bring you 8x8 stencils. I find it very frustrating working with small stencils and trying to expand them out. With this one, we can always trim it down if we wish to. Our stencils are also cut from a higher grade mylar than most people use. And I mention this because it means that when we use them with texture paste, we're going to get more depth to them. And it also means that when we emboss them from our machines with a rubber mat, you're going to get a higher level of embossing too than you would do with many other people's stencils. So it's just a really lovely ability to have, and that little further touch of quality with the product. We're then going to bring in our Blue Emperor Pigment ink pad. Now these are quick dry pigment ink pads. If you've not seen these already, they come in 6 different colours. I absolutely love this Blue Emperor one because it's got this beautiful sort of shading, as you can see across the top of the pad here, and they're great to work with in so many ways. They're acid free, so we can use them in our scrapbooks. They are water resistant, so we can colour them with our watercolours and bits like that. They're also alcohol ink friendly, so if you wish to colour over your sort of stamped images or your backgrounds with alcohol markers, then that too should work perfectly for you as well. So just a really good quality ink that's going to take you through many different aspects of stamping. They're also pigmented, so if you wish to heat emboss your image, that's going to work nicely for you too. Now I'm not going to do all of this because you're going to get the idea pretty quickly, but we're just using a blending brush to bring the ink over and adding a small sort of shaded area onto one section of this stencil. And again, being a larger stencil doesn't mean we have to do all of it anyway. You might wish to just do a small edge down each side and then build something else out in the centre. So it's a nice way to show you. Now with this stencil, another little party trick that I'm like to sort of mention, it's not one we're going to be doing for today's project, but actually it's lovely to see, is if you take your stencil from its original place and drop it down and then add in another colour, maybe a texture paste or a different medium, you end up with this really cool diamond background that looks really lovely. There is also a way in which you can take this and you can move it across to the diamond you've coloured and then add in again another colour or a different style product through them areas to create a different style of checkerboard as well. Today we're not going to do either of those. We're going to bring in our lovely Rodney the Snowman stamp set. Now Rodney is going to be on the focal of this project as well, but actually we're going to go for the smallest stamp in the set at this stage. We're going to go for this tiny little snowflake just located above Rodney's arm. Now whenever I bring you stamps, I want to jam in as much value for money as I can do. I don't want you having big areas on this sheet that we could have used to bring you a stamp and haven't. So anytime we can fit in a snowflake or a corner or a sentiment, you'll see throughout the whole of the Festive Wishes collection, we've certainly put in as many items as we can. So I'm going to bring in this dinky little snowflake. I'm going to place that down there for the second while I find my stamping block. Now we're going to pick this one up on a block. We're going to bring back in our Blue Emperor ink pad, and all we're going to do is pick up that ink and start stamping these snowflakes in the middle. And of course, this is going to make a lovely background. You could have done this in a different colour if you prefer. You could change the direction. So if you notice, I'm bringing mine over so the snowflake is exactly the same each time I stamp it down, but you could start twisting it slightly to set them off if you wish. Now, of course, as I mentioned, this background could be used all year through. So you might have a little heart stamp that you would prefer to put in the middle here. You might have a little flower head that you would prefer to use. The choice really is yours, and I think it's going to break up and give you a different style depending on what you do with them. You could of course choose to miss odd ones or go off in different patterns and add areas of different interest. Now with my background, and I didn't know this when I made my first card, every single part of this one is stamped, because I didn't really know where I was going to go with it. But when we jump forward to the one we're going to be doing today, I know I'm going to be adding Rodney in the middle here, so I've chose not to do that extra stamping because we're going to be covering it up. Equally, we could have staved our ink and not done the stenciling through that bit as well. And this is just about knowing where your project's going to be heading. So sometimes it can be quite time saving to plan ahead. If you're like me, that rarely happens. I never really know where I'm going, and every project changes halfway through. So I tend to end up doing everything and then thinking, well, I could have saved a little bit of time there. But do you know what? It's not the end of the world, is it? So let's layer this onto our card. So I'm going to bring in a store-bought 8x8 card. So whenever we're talking about store-bought cards, they tend to be slightly smaller because it'll be your envelope, which is 8x8. So it's slightly under that, so about 7 3/4 inches. I've then added on a night sky navy matte. This one would be approximately 7.5 inches. I'm then going to bring in some polar white card, and I've added this on with some foam tape just to give a bit of dimension. This is my 2mm foam tape. So we also do a 3mm, which of course is going to give you more depth, but this time we're going to go for the 2, so it's a little bit more friendly on postage. From there, we're then going to bring in our lovely panel that we've just been working on, and we're going to check that the card is the right way round so that we don't end up making this the wrong way. Again, that's something I shouldn't confess to, but happens more often than it should. So we'll place that part down. Now we need to talk about our top part. Now we've already seen where we're heading with this one. We're going to be stamping Rodney. So let's bring in Rodney and add in that detail for us. So back to the stamp press. Let's open this one up. Let's bring in our lovely Rodney stamp, stick him down, and then we'll just find a piece of card for us to be stamping this one on. So I've got this piece trimmed down ready. Let's have a little look and see. Have we got all we could do with moving Rodney just a little bit? So we'll take him off of there and we'll lay him down over here. Now we're actually going to stamp this time in the same Blue Emperor ink pad because all of this card is sort of in that frosty blue theme. So we're going to bring this in and stamp him in the same shade. So again, straight over the top with this one. Give that a nice firm push just to make sure that the ink has transferred from the stamp and onto the card. I'm quite happy with that one, but like all silhouette areas on the stamp, sometimes you might want to go back with another ink. So we're going to do exactly the same again, just to make sure that his mouth is filled properly. And we'll go back in and add that down. Much better, much happier with that. This is the joy of a stamp press. I love a stamp press because it means if we do have any areas like that that we want to alter, we can go back and fix them. Now you don't want to watch me colour all of this in, but it's just nice to share with you that I'm using some alcohol markers. I've got lots of different brands here, but when we bring these in and we start colouring in our lovely Rodney, our ink is alcohol ink friendly, and that basically means that it won't bleed. A lot of inks, when we come to bring colour to them from alcohol, it will bleed and we will end up with a bit of a dual tone effect going on, which really doesn't look too good. So it's nice that with these quick dry pigment ink pads, that's something we don't have to worry about. Even when we're working with really light shades, you'll notice that you'll be able to colour in and it won't bleed into them. So you've got that nice solid colour and sort of area to infill without the fear that you're going to end up with it being contaminated. Now you don't want to watch me do too much of this, I'm sure you've got the idea. I also colour like a 2-year-old. I'm not the best colourist. Of course, you can do lots of blending techniques with alcohol markers, and I tend to stay well clear. I tend to stick to quite basic, quick, easy colouring. And one of my little tips always is if your colouring ability isn't brilliant, if you're a bit like me, then there's always ways that we can sort of distract the eye, is how I like to refer to it. So possibly bringing in something along the lines of our Gemstones glitter texture paste in diamond white. This is a great product to work with because of course it's a texture paste, so we can use it for our stencils. So again, with our lovely diamond stencil, had you have wished to, we could use that over or through that instead. But actually another thing I like to do with these is to bring them in and stipple them over my colouring, because if I haven't been exact with my colouring or it's not quite perfect, by stippling this across, that lovely glitz and sparkle that we've got coming through in the texture base will certainly distract and give you a really lovely look. It's also quite a nice way of having lots of different colours shine through and yet still creating that illusion of the snow falling down. Now these are water-based texture pastes, and that means that you can also dilute them down. So you might wish to just flick it over the top using a splatter brush and create more of a falling snow style. You can also apply these with a brayer or a palette knife if you prefer, to really sort of eke them out over the top of your project. Many, many ideas for you there, just to sort of help disguise your colouring a little bit if you're not the most confident colourist like me. Then once we have coloured in our lovely Rodney, so here's one we did earlier with a bit more detail to save some time. Once we've created him, we can then bring in our ink. So let's have a little look. What have we got? Where's our blending brush? We'll bring in our little ink again, and we'll bring in a small blending mat. And we're going to use the same shade of ink to just go around the edges. So we should have a bit of blue already on our brush. Take off the excess from there, and we'll just do a small amount of blending. Again, not always an ink style that you would imagine you would blend with. Pigment inks aren't something that's traditional that you blend from, but actually it's one of them ones that I find really lovely to blend with. So whether we're going over the stencil like we did in the beginning, or whether we just want to go around and add some shading to the edge of our panels, I find that works really nicely. We're then going to bring back our texture paste. Now this time, instead of going on through a stipple brush, we're going to use one of our stencils. So I'm actually going to bring in our Snow Flurry stencil, which come out in our earlier release. This was with the Christmas Essentials collection, and we're going to go back in with our texture paste. So these, by the way, they come with this little lid on the top of them that is actually sealed when you receive them. And it's a great way of making sure that they're fresh on arrival. We want them to be fresh and ready and last as long as they possibly can for you. So they have this perfect seal on the top there. You'll notice with all of mine, I cut round this and then keep that in place, just because it's another barrier in there to make sure that that's nice and airtight and stays fresh for longer. Once we've now got our texture paste, we don't necessarily want to cover over the top of Rodney. So we're going to go round the edges here, just bringing this out, filling in the areas. I don't mind if the odd bit goes on Rodney, not the end of the world, but I'm trying to kind of avoid him just so that we don't take away from the look of him with big chunks of snow. When we stippled over the top of Rodney, that was quite fine, that was quite transparent. If we had big blobs of snow, we might cover up an eye or something along them lines, because of course this is filled full of white glitter and is going to maintain that colour. So we don't want to lose his features underneath there. So we're going to bring that round and have a little look and see what we've created, see if we're happy with that. As you can see, nothing too exact, we're just sort of applying. And yeah, that's great, I'm happy with this. If there was an area, so maybe like here, where my little robin's got a small piece on that, I'm not overly happy with. So we'll bring in another palette knife and we can just remove that from there. And that's always quite lovely to see. This is always something I say as well. You know, we've all done it. We've put texture paste through a stencil and removed the stencil, and we've moved it in process of doing the texture paste, or we're not happy with how it's gone and you've got a bit of a movement to it and it's not quite as crisp as you want it to be. Never fear going in and taking away that texture paste. Take it off from where you had it. You know, the worst that might happen is you'll leave a bit of a mark on your card, but you can always turn the card over and use it again. But the texture paste is where your value is. That's where you've spent your hard-earned money. Taking that texture paste back means that we can use it again. And you know, card, flip it, texture paste, use it again, nothing really lost. So never be afraid to deconstruct what you've just constructed if it means that you can get better value for money out of it. And if you're not happy with what you created in the first place, you haven't really got anything to lose. And I try to bear that in mind when I'm crafting, because of, you know, these are always considerable purchases and we don't want to waste them if we don't have to. Can't pretend I'm always that frugal in everything I do, but where possible, it's nice to be frugal. So let's pop that out to one side and have a little look. Now obviously we've removed the snow from down this side, but we can see I've added on a small amount running across the bottom. Always good to take your finger across the edge there if you're worried about it being around the edges, and it will just clean those up. Same around these snow pieces. If you just want to take them away, it will make that a crisper edge to your project and it will make it slightly neater. So now we have Rodney done, we'll pop him to one side. He'll be drying roughly 20 minutes-ish, I suppose. Depends, of course, on the depth you've put through your stencil, your temperature in your room even. So there's a few variations that will alter that, but roughly about 20 minutes-ish. So here's one I've done earlier, layered onto Night Sky Navy to match in with a layer beneath. And we're going to bring him in and place him down on the side there. Now, Rodney also has a couple of little sentiments in his set. You will see that you've got Let It Snow and we've got Snowflake Wishes. Now, I love this Snowflake Wishes and I really like this font. It's quite a playful font. So I've gone ahead and I've already stamped this one out in the same blue Emperor. And we're going to bring this in and place it just off to one side there. And that completes our little project for today. So very easy to do, but brought in quite a few different pieces. So we've got our diamond stencil, we've got our Rodney stamp, we've got our diamond white texture paste, and of course we've got our blue Emperor ink pad. Now, all of the products that I've been using today are available from your favourite Jamie Rodgers Crafts stockist, I'm sure. If you don't already have a favourite Jamie Rodgers Crafts stockist, head on to our website, which is www.jamierodgerscrafts.com, and on there you will find a stockist's guide. Do support our stockists if you can, please. Check them out and then find out where you can order your items from. And if you've got any questions, then of course you can contact us directly. And if your favourite store that you're purchasing items from isn't already on our stockist list, then give them a nudge and tell them that these are items that you'd like them to be stocking, because I'm sure we would love to have them as one of our stockists too. Now, thank you very much for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. Bye for now.